welcome everyone. My name is Alissa Torres, and I'm coming to you as a security practitioner. I work for a surface transportation company, I'll say that. I am a senior manager and I lead the threat defense team. And so they're like, wait, are you speaking to us from your throne as a manager? No, a lot of this presentation, as you can see from my first slide, let's go. A lot of this presentation is going to be from the analyst or the customer perspective. Because today we're talking about, I mean, the title sounds like really angry, it might be a little aggressive, but security tool migration. Oftentimes when you have chosen a new tool, I don't care whether it's a SOAR or XDR, EDR, SIEM, you have these hopes and dreams. And you can point to the vendor, what is this technical sales team who might have wooed you, or you can just point to the frustrations that you deal with on the daily. And you're like, I cannot wait for that new tool to come. I cannot wait for that new tool to come, because you think it will solve a lot of the obstacles that you're currently facing. And so finally you'll have a great place for case management, or finally you'll have a product that comes with fantastic baked in detections. I wish this for you, but through the lens, I'm coming to you from the lens of a customer and maybe someone who has been burned by high expectations for tools and a lack of preparation and preparedness. So my what is this called? A disclaimer. Typically, if someone's speaking on legal issues, they'll say, I am not a lawyer. Or if they are a lawyer, they'll say, I'm a lawyer, but not your lawyer. Well, in this case, for this session, I'm not an engineer, and I'm definitely not your engineer. So as I show you this beautiful data flow diagram, shout out to James J. Fisher. He has this posted on his website, and I find it to be a fantastic conglomerate of data flow and maybe a little bit of the aspects of the security stack for this organization to include stakeholders. This is a pretty complex diagram. So we are going to be focusing on aspects that are not captured by diagrams like this, because you certainly are aware of how the tool is going to fit into your environment. Well, I hope that for you. There are some people that are in the know that are part of this project plan that understand the technical mechanics of how a new technology is going to fit into place. And so we're going to go from there. All of the things, in addition to step-by-step instructions on how to set up and actually implement a tool, we're going to cover the other aspects, the things that will destroy your quality of life if not addressed in the front end. Yeah, now I've got your attention. So I always pitch that it's fantastic to be present in a security team, or maybe as part of the mission, the security mission, if you're not part of the direct support team. But hey, it's fantastic to be present when you migrate tools, because you can say in your resume, now we were talking about selling yourself before, properly crafting your story of why you're here, what led you to apply for this job. I'd say also growing your resume and being able to capture these experiences, these painful experiences of tool migration. Every time you live through a migration in your security stack, you earn another badge out there that you survived, and you can speak to your experience. So this is the way I pitch it to my team and all of the other analysts that I work with and have an opportunity to motivate. Beat the drum, we're building your resume. So I hope that you take this in the same way, whatever trials and tribulations are brought to you, as you, with your eyes on the prize, pivot into another technology. So there are some easy to point to pitfalls that are commonplace in tool migration. I love some of these slides. I'm so excited to show them to you. But the common pitfalls, why we can't have nice things, is really an inability to properly quantify where we are with our current security stack and where we want to go. So defining success. All right. So all of that is part of planning. Adequate planning looks like I venture into the onboarding of a new tool with a very structured set of expectations, a laid out roadmap of milestones, and what it's going to take as close to reality as possible, what it's going to take to get this product to the most viable products, like when we can actually get, say, hands-on keyboard, or when we can start depending on this new tool to send in legit logging, legit observations, because maybe that new tool is a witness device in your environment. So we want to acknowledge even the stats that I grabbed. This is a crazy stat from Panther Labs. For 2021 and 2022, Panther put out a state of SIEM report. And these are really rare because many of these annual reports that capture things like, well, what percentage of security teams are onboarding a SOAR? They don't ask the question that was captured in the Panther Labs report, which is how long does onboarding take for a tool like a SIEM? I kind of think, I couldn't find these reports out there on the internet anywhere. So if you can, I know I have some Google hacks, Google dork hackers who may be present in the audience. Please, if you find a link to this 2021 or 2022 report from Panther, drop it in so everyone can enjoy, because this is really quite rare. In the 2021 report, it says on average 6 months is what the 400 participants of the survey kind of reported as their average rollout time for a SIEM. That is not in line with what most vendors are going to tell you. Well, because most vendors are answering your question of how long does this typically take? In small print, there is an understanding of if the sunspots don't impact us, if everything is in place and if the environment is known and you already have use cases as to what success looks like, defined and prioritized. But we should always look for real data. Real data versus the rosy picture that is often presented when we're just venturing on this road to security tool migration. So sorry for the reality check, but you need to seek out reality checks so you can prepare for what most folks experience. And I'd say that most stakeholders are going to either embrace a dramatic underestimation of how long something's going to take. Like if you tell me our SOAR is going to be rolled out in a couple of weeks, I will believe you because that's awesome. But we want to have an understanding, of what a realistic time frame is. So I give this to you. And then I also made mention of, we have a few of these phrases going on in my workplace right now. They're like mottos or catchphrases. When this fill in the blank security product comes on board, we will be able to create reports that capture metrics easily. We'll actually have the metrics we need, right? We'll have a case management platform where we can actually start doing the right thing and documenting appropriately. Like all of these caveats, all of these like, wait and see, it'll be better. That's really important to provide hope to your stakeholders. But we want to, again, base it in reality. We want to say, hey, we should probably be documenting regardless of whether a tool is facilitating our documentation of, say, incident triage, incident categorization. We probably shouldn't wait to implement and to answer the questions as to what should be documented when an incident is being triaged. So I give this to you. Of course, there is the promise of SOAR. When the SOAR gets here, that is security orchestration and automation response tool. Yeah, SOAR, I love it. It is right now the magic, right? When the SOAR gets here, we'll be able to properly communicate, say, to the service desk that a user's account is suspended because there's some suspicious activity. We will be able to finally communicate with ease, and actually maybe for the first time to some of our stakeholders and some of the people that we have relationships, operational relationships with. So we shouldn't wait. We should not wait. We should need to capture, act on, to say, go ahead and craft your process while things are hard. And talk to any SOAR, say, sales engineer, technical specialist, and they're going to say, yeah, it's best to have all of that mapped out already before you seek to migrate to a new capability, before you seek to implement orchestration and automation. So hopefully you can relate to some of these. It will be better when. Some of them are true. Others, no. We're still left with the same people, same capabilities, same potentially culture, resistant to change. So we have to address it head on. Looking for my water. Oh, there's some Coke left. What's wrong with her drinking Coke? It is lunchtime. So this checklist actually occupies a space in the slide deck at the front end, which is where we find ourselves. But you'll see this checklist in the back of the slide deck as well. And I will speak to a few of these now, but I'm hoping, all I need to do is give you one additional aspect that, you're a part, or maybe you're one of the representatives from your team that is joining in on this Tiger team to decide, plan, and implement a new security tool. I want to give you that one thing that no one else has thought of that you contribute to the conversation that saves the day. That's what I want for you. Maybe it's going to end up being another bullet on your resume, saved millions of dollars by, properly preparing for the onboarding of our new SIEM. I want this for you. So hopefully there will be those nuggets, those treasures in this steaming pile of slides. But this deck is not going to be comprehensive. Remember, I don't have that engineering perspective, particularly when I was sitting behind writing this deck. But I have been burned so many times over with not answering questions like, how much time do we have to migrate? Some of the maybe factors that you need to consider for migration timeline come down here to the last point of my checklist that I added. Are there licensing costs that are going to be incurred if we do this migration the right way? I'm going to pitch to you that it's a warm handoff. Well, what is a warm handoff? Well, we used a warm handoff as a term when we were bringing in a past life, a past employer, we were bringing our security operations center in-house. So we were coming off of an MSSP, and we were so fortunate that our MSSP partner, well, it was probably part of the contract too, but our MSSP partner just sat next to us. We did that warm handoff. So the analysts that were currently running the show, that were part of the service provider team, they made sure that all skills had been transferred. Likewise, but it's a tool. Yeah, you want to have both of your tools up and running, and you want to be doing verification before you cut. Before you flip the ON/OFF switch on legacy tool. And we're going to call it legacy tool, not because we think it's old, but you decided it was old. So we're going to leave it behind. We'll call it legacy tool and new tool, just as points on the timeline to your success. Other things I want to point out, the brilliance of this checklist. Obviously, you need to identify your stakeholders. And sometimes the stakeholders, they're not obvious. Which team should be developing use cases? Well, we want to identify all the customers, all the people that have a hand in say, engaging with this tool. was talking to my team about implementing some blocks on our firewall, for example. If all of a sudden the say steps required in order to implement a block on the firewall changed, well, maybe my team would have something to say about that, So we are in fact engaging with the tool, makes us a user, and users matter, right? So we want to get that feedback, but it all requires identifying those folks who are playing a role or engaging with legacy tool. And likewise, we can assume that they will have those same requirements maybe more adequately met with new tool coming on board. So identifying stakeholders is huge. And then like custom features, sometimes a vendor will convince you to roll out a tool under the condition that if you go ahead and give them the thumbs up, sign the contract, all of that, that they'll craft, say, a unique parser or unique integration for you. So we want to factor that into our timeline, right? Remember, realistic expectations. Do you have any internal engineers who are going to be supporting your work? Well, take a look at their current workload. Like maybe they let you look at their Jira board. Hopefully everyone pronounces it Jira. But hey, take a look at their next several sprints. What do they have planned? And where is the onboarding or the migration of your tool going to fit in? I mean, you might not be able to do anything about it, but you at least be able to, again, set realistic expectations or identify a need for surge or vendor support as you seek to customize and roll into this next tool. So how did I do? I will hit some of these as I'm going through this slide deck because, hey, we're going to be talking about, I'm lobbing off the big three as we're looking at the factors that matter: technology, people, and process. I know that there's more sophisticated ways to evaluate and cover down on a project. Most of these more sophisticated ways are going to be including additional components, say data and governance and organizational service model. But hey, we're going to focus on the three big ones because, I can talk and we don't have too much time. But, I know that this stage of preparation and planning is about assessing the impact of such a change. Like, it sounds fantastic that we pivot to a new EDR capability. There's so much promise. The old one has fallen by the wayside and hasn't adopted new features. But that change, as we pivot to the new tool, may have some larger farther reaching ramifications. So taking a methodical approach is going to behoove you. And I did warn you that I'm really representing the analyst perspective in this presentation. And that's kind of a safeguard, because remember, you're going to have a couple of representatives. You have a couple of seats at the table as maybe the proof of capability. You're doing the actual tool testing in your environment or a test environment. You're going to get a couple of opportunities, one, if you're lucky to put forth and contribute input through, say, contributions of those particular representatives. So you have to, I guess, point that I haven't captured on the slide, choose carefully who you're sending to represent the interests of your team. If you do have like a tiger team who's evaluating products, kind of doing a often called a bake-off of different vendor tools in a certain lane or aspect, Gartner quadrant. So we're going to talk about the human factor, not specifically restricted to the lens of, who's going to be the bull in the china shop, the most aggressive representative that we can send to that table. But we also have tremendous ramifications just introduced to our planning, our ability to migrate and implement a new capability, that is tied up in the human factor. So we can note that there could be a strong resistance to change. Going back to how long of a timeline do I have for this migration? The shorter the timeline for migration and onboarding, we can anticipate there'll be a higher resistance to change. I'm glad that Zach asked me the question about, hey, why do you like teaching? There are aspects of teaching that are befuddling. There are aspects of learning something new that befuddle me. And I tend to have that visceral reaction when I'm being bombarded with new content and I don't know how to properly frame it from, something from the past. Like, this looks nothing like the 5 other EDRs that I've used. So now where do I go from here? I don't have that opportunity to use past knowledge to scaffold and help me incorporate familiarity with this new tool. So the increased frustration is going to increase the probability or the prevalence of tool rejection. Dun, 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 dun. And so more on that in a minute. Lack of familiarity with the tool, lack of interest in the new tool is going to result potentially in additional human errors, not only on the side of and we're going to break it out into different roles and how this could manifest based on the role that a person is playing, an employee or a particular analyst is playing in this migration. But hey, human errors can be in investigations, in triage, in data interpretation. Think about from the analyst perspective, but then human errors can be introduced in misconfiguration of platform. We see this made mention of in threat reports across the board over the last 4 or 5 years, citing cloud platform misconfigurations. So it's all about ensuring that the human factor doesn't pivot you or bounce you off course from your well-defined and well-structured milestones. Over reliance on new technology. Remember, sometimes it's the new addition is painted as the solution. What's going to finally be the all-in-one button. We're finally going to be able to playbook everything out. So we're going to automate, enrich, and automated response. It's like automated collection, automated enrichment, automated response, boom. But over-reliance on technology may prevent us from really honing in on where the missteps are. And then I've already mentioned unrealistic expectations, but feeling the disappointment of unrealistic expectations, that's kind of rough. Technical skills gap, obviously, if you're rolling out a new tool, you have to anticipate most, if not all of your team has never used this tool before, and certainly has never used this tool in your environment, which can be a total game changer. So I like to call the struggles, the pain experienced on a daily when you're trying to do your, day in, day out tasks, get the work done. That impedance, that's an even better word, but I call it turbulence. So because you picture like the number of, say, the things that slow you down as you're trying to develop proficiency, you're trying to get more work done in fewer hours so you can live a life outside of work. I don't know if that's an option for you, but the turbulence introduces stress. It's like I had muscle memory, and I was just complaining that on my work machine, it's Windows, but my personal machine, Mac, if you go back and forth, maybe you've been throwing Linux sometimes, that as you switch platforms, your muscle memory sometimes, it outs you as to what platform you've most recently been using as far as operating system. So likewise, the turbulence of change, the turbulence really needs to be quantified. So as I was saying, the more changes to a workflow, work environment, playbooks, the higher the prevalence of tool rejection. If you think tool rejection, you're like, how dare analysts reject a tool? We paid good money for that tool, like you're a mom saying, you better eat that food. We paid good money for that meal. Tool rejection can manifest in so many different ways, whether it show up in the metrics over time. We're just not getting any faster. We're just not getting any better. There's always another way to form an investigation or a triage on a particular incident. It might be a vote of lack of confidence that your analysts are pivoting from the new tools UI to maybe some of the tools that are really feeding into said new tool. So they're going to ground and doing analysis right against, maybe that UI or search capability present in your data repository, your data lake platform. So we want to acknowledge that it might not be an overt tool rejection, but we want to watch out for these passive aggressive techniques that may creep their way in should analysts really find or experience difficulty in making use of new tools. Yeah, notable here, stakeholder roles, responsibilities can shift dramatically at times with the introduction of a new tool. At a past company that I worked at, I was leading an incident response team. And in earlier days, before I picked up the incident response team, they were making use of QRadar. I'm sorry, but QRadar and that SIEM was owned by another team. And when they pivoted to Logarithm, the incident response team became the owner and caretaker. So thank goodness we had some SIEM engineers that were also kind of folded in, but we became, or we viewed our tool through a totally different lens. We weren't just a customer, but we were also the service provider for all the other folks that were using our tool. And so you have to be cognizant of that, because maybe I've never been a tool or product owner before. So I've never had to cater to the whims and demanding requests of a customer base. So notable here, you want to make sure that you provide training for that aspect, not just the tool interface, but how to engage a customer base, how to pull in stakeholders so you can solicit their input and feedback in direct channels, as opposed to what might come down at you through escalation and horizontal escalation too. Cost overruns affecting other project funding. Nothing pisses people off more than to be told. I mean, maybe some things do, but like your cohorts, your peers in an organization, your project starts to go from what was supposed to be completed in 6 months to now 2 years. That project is still sucking funding. And so you're going to generate some ire, hate, and discontentment from others who have projects in the queue awaiting funding. So all of these things need to be considered. Yes. All right. So what is the turbulence level? You can actually calculate or devise your own manner in which you can calculate turbulence. I give you some things to factor in. And I also show you on the right a turbulence calculator. So you want to take a look at your team. And I was saying like, hey, eyes on the engineering team too. Maybe you own the engineering team very well, but you want to get a feel for the folks that are going to sign off on minimum viable products, so the analysts or your customer base and the engineering team, and really assess what is the operational tempo. Again, how realistic is the timeline that we've put together? I'd rather have a realistic timeline than create these hopes and dreams, this false expectation, because you know what, that crushes souls. Implementation timeline is going to be impacted. So we take a look at that. Over that implementation timeline, what will the staffing levels be? And currently, what is our technical savvy, or what skill set do we have for the tool that's going to be dropped into place? Operational resilience. how many playbooks are we going to have to rewrite? How many standard operating procedures or recipes, depending on what you're pulling together to define the steps an analyst has to move through in order to accomplish a mission. The steps, say, network device admin needs to move through in order to perform maintenance. So how many of those step-by-steps will have to be rewritten? Factor that in, because it's the same people that are going to be rewriting, that are maintaining that operational tempo and day in, day out work. This is exciting. I love it. But I also get a bead on the current stakeholder sentiment. You know, say I did have representatives at the table for proof of concepts and capability testing. There's probably going to be some dissent, some not arriving at a consensus for recommended tools. Maybe I'm vetting 5 different tools and I have like 3 that were front runners. You know, votes from the stakeholders. It wasn't, what is this called? Whatever. I did not have everyone agreeing. Typing this in. Why can't she think of this word? But we want to be watchful. The folks that didn't win, they didn't get to pick their dream tool. There may be some reticence to accept the chosen tool with open arms. I have a favorite tool, and all the time I'm like grumpy about not being able to use it. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm not going to tell you what my favorite tool is, and it's not volatility. You think you know me. But no, talking about enterprise security tools. But I will say, like, there are some hard feelings that probably should be addressed, because you have to go back and get buy-in from those additional stakeholders, even though, you know, they didn't get what they wanted. I love it. Not only am I looking at what the current state of all of these factors are that may contribute to turbulence, I want to look ahead. Like, I'm about to piss these people off, you know, with another decision, like, hey, we didn't get the training budget this year. Yeah, that frowny face that I'm now rolling out and letting everyone know about is going to impact sentiment, but perhaps in a different way. You know, maybe you're investing in tools that will be perceived, but you're not investing in my skill set. So we always want to have, what is this, a finger on the pulse, a bead on what that sentiment is. I guess other ways of saying it, morale. Through the lens of the security analyst, how can they make or break my progress in this space as tool migration is underway? We want to consider, in many cases, I've tried to split the middle and describe different scenarios based on different tools that you might be swapping out in your stack. But most of these tools are going to impact the security analyst. So they should be considered a primary stakeholder if they are the primary user. And again, their stress levels are going to really impede how they perceive change. And increased stress can lead to that tool rejection. It takes time to build muscle memory. So one thing I want to be very pointed about is you can't pretend the metrics should be the same or better when you're onboarding a new tool. When you're starting to derive metrics from the new tool, it doesn't make sense that the metrics would be better. You would actually expect the contrary, because we're taking more time to figure out how to pivot, where the gaps are, right? And enrichment, maybe the enrichments are not prioritized, only certain ones have shown up, but we've pivoted over to the new platform already. So it's going to take analysts longer, because maybe they have to manually seek out enrichments, more context for the incidents that they're triaging. So you want to have someone who's in the know, that understands all of these aspects, controlling like the go button. When the needle hits, oh, I did it. When the needle hits the record again, when the metrics start going live again, it has to be the right time with all of these factors and considerations taken into account. And then it's the definition that the analyst would provide as to what that minimum viable product is. It's not up to the engineer, because, hey, if they get authentication, like, oh, a single sign-on is working, go. that's not adequate support in most cases. Just getting your analyst to the default dashboard is probably not ideal. It depends, but expectations are probably set higher based on some of these use cases that you have asked them to craft. Detection engineers are kind of in a unique position, particularly if the tool that we're migrating from is where their body of work lies. The detection engineering, it is art, it is science. Some may call it some data science baked in there too, but I will say to be a detection engineer, you have created a body of work. So you have to give it some respect, and that's going to really require an estimate as to how many hours it will take to translate to I think like lift and shift your detection content. So I factor that in. In that migration of detection rules, there might be an in-between process. Like, hey, I'm bringing up my Q radar rules, and they're not going to drop directly into Sentinel. Actually, there's a really good resource that Microsoft has crafted at the back of this deck. And it's so awesome because they're walking folks through the migration to Sentinel, and they've made it specific to the tool you're moving from. So that might be helpful, but I think that there's a lot of overlap too. I think it's fantastic marketing that they try to make it unique to your environment, unique to the bad decision that you've made in the past that now you're like kind of pivoting into their tool. But there's, again, a lot of overlap in this discussion. I would throw out there that there may be some required upskilling for the detection engineers that is not new tool or new platform specific, but it's going to teach them the skills they need to help with the migration of their detection rule library. So be on the lookout. Now, I have to say, I recently submitted a budget. I know, I must be somebody if someone's asking me to help out with the budget. Sarcasm. But I realized maybe a month now after I submitted the proposal that I factored in the cost of training for tool use, but I didn't factor in how much like getting these cats to training is going to be, right? So like, oh, what am I going to do? Like pay out of pocket? What am I going to do? How am I going to get the people to the training or pay an instructor to come out and train us? Didn't factor that in. So I want to be careful to capture all of these one-offs. You're like, oh, that's an edge case. Oh, there'll be an extra $1,000 laying around. Maybe not. Maybe you'll have to wait for additional funding before you can get the training in for your detection engineers or your analysts. And you know, the rollout of the tool won't stop while we're waiting for the training budget to appear. So at the start, the offset of this project planning, we want to capture those costs. And part of that, so like pre-game, before migration, you'll have your detection engineers assessing apples to apples is one of the elements that adds turbulence into a transition. If you're moving your detection libraries or detection content, there will be apples to apples, like, hey, in this security product, they're able to do process introspection so they can see code injection, evidence of code injection. Over here in our new tool, they don't have process introspection, so they won't see, I'm sorry, but yeah, you bought it. They won't see code injection using the same techniques or say insights. So we want to have an understanding, because that then has detections occurring in a different manner as we move from one EDR to another EDR. Again, sorry. Dang, I need to go back and look for that. A tool engineer is also going to require some specialized training, and this is a little dicey. Remember I was saying, take a peek at what your engineering team has on their docket for the upcoming months. anything that might conflict with this, there probably should be, any competing priorities. There probably should be a conversation. Not blaming or accusational, like, why do you were supposed to finish this so you could jump in and start working on ours. No. Because that's said and done. That's like, what is this called? Water under the bridge. Those are wasted CPU cycles. We want to move forward with what we can do to achieve success and realize our high expectations. So we want to make sure that our tool engineers have the skills that they need to implement this capability. You're hearing upskilling a lot, but oftentimes there is a reduction in price tag, like, hey, we can cross 50K off of our budget if we do in-house tooling, if we do in-house customization with our tool engineers, instead of paying for, those sales engineers or tech specialists from the vendor team. Carefully consider this decision. I understand why you'd want to pivot that way, savings, but it doesn't save you any money if you anticipated this project to take 6 months, but because of operational tempo, it's rolling into 2 years until you get to minimum viable product. So yeah, be realistic about this. Bang. All right. Bake in the verification process. So for every detection rule that you pivot over, you're going to make sure it works. That was more applicable to my detection engineers. But likewise, for the tool engineers, you want to ensure that as we satisfy that use case that the primary stakeholders put forth, they prioritized it. You want to make sure that it is bang on, is actually getting the job done. And ensure long-term funding. Because just because you have the server set up in your environment doesn't mean there's any endpoints reporting back to the cloud, to your on-prem server, however your architecture is set up. Operational process changes. We're now on the second factor of the 3 process. Woo! These are the questions that you may be pelted with if you're, say, the product owner. How does this tool work? Did the implementation of this new security tool affect data collection? Access controls. Access controls are going to be different because it's a different tool. You might try to mimic the same access controls that you had on the other tool, but it's going to be slightly different. You got to capture that stuff. Platform auditing. It's really oftentimes the last thing that's turned on is the ability to track what the users of your platform are doing. You want to make sure that not only is that turned on, but takeaway is I want to be able to retain that. Speaking of retention as well, that might have had a dramatic shift depending on vendor, expense, and decisions that you made when you're drafting said contract. Changes in baked-in detection. So where did it go? You're asking, if there's a UI involved, you're asking an analyst to make an adjustment. And it could be a tremendous number of adjustments in their workflow, process, and procedure. So you want to have your dashboards ready set to provide a comfortable, intuitive experience of that. There may be new data entry requirements, so you want to socialize those. Remember, documentation matters, but nobody wants to do it. So this is where it's all going to come into play. If you invest effort in making a tool approachable, it will hopefully be perceived as approachable and easy to use. But normally it doesn't just happen, particularly if the vendor is pitching, oh, this is totally customizable. You want to make sure that you get in front of it and customize it before you have an audience, active participants in your hot mess that you're standing up. Shifts in automation. Whereas potentially, say I wanted to go out and collect data from an endpoint, that automation may have been baked in to the capability, the legacy tool. But maybe with this new architecture, my new tool is going to make a call to, say, a secondary tool that's going to be performing the triage. How does all that work? verify back to my tool engineers. Revamp the playbooks, revamp the playbook decision trees. That might be a necessary element, but this is a window of opportunity I want to emphasize, because if you have, like with QRadar in the environment that I was speaking to you about earlier, with QRadar, I had all these rules turned on, tons of noise. So nothing, actually someone admitted to me that all QRadar alerts were being sent to a special say folder in their inbox. They weren't even looking at it. That's called tool rejection. It can happen in the front end, or it can happen over time. This is your window of opportunity to get it right, to start from the ground up, to remove redundancy, to remove data sources that are worthless, detection rules that are worthless. So let's act now, right? And implement automations that are going to provide value. Gotta love it. Migrating detection content. I gave you my spiel on this. Again, a window of opportunity to get rid of all of that hot mess and really go in and onboard high fidelity detection rules. Of course, defining a process for evaluation of detection rules as continuous monitoring elements. Remember to recreate silent log alerts. I'm huge on the silent log alerts. I'm huge on being able to discern whether an endpoint stopped reporting in because of service termination. Those are really money makers, because when it comes to pass that you have a critical incident and you pivot back and try to collect up the necessary logs, it is demoralizing, and I guess it results in an epic fail for the investigators if you don't have the data sets that they need to answer the questions of what happened on the box. Yes. And then I told you or coached you already on the warm handoff. Ideally, I would like to have the onboarded tool right there, ready, set, firing in detection only mode. And I want to have my legacy tool that's outgoing right there so I can compare the performance of the two. No regrets, right? We're still pulling the plug, but we want to make sure that we have, say, scavenged all the messages of automation and detection capabilities, everything that might be baked into that tool that we're ripping out. We want to take with us as institutional knowledge. Yes, all right. Technology considerations is really my last factor of the three. And geez, this really is open the book, turn the pages. It's going to be a different set of considerations based on the technology that you're working with or trying to onboard. But all kind of starts the same in the primary stakeholders defining use cases. What integrations need to be prioritized? For you to actually get on the platform and start doing some work, if not all of your work. What should you take with you from past tool and what should you leave? The scary thing is sometimes when you pivot to a new tool, you're creating a whole new category or subcategory of legacy devices. Has anyone experienced this? Like, yeah, that sports car that cost a ton of dough, it doesn't support our server 2012 R2 machines. Right? I mean, like, how could this have come to pass? So I want to be watchful of that, because that's definitely a technology consideration. It might be a PCI requirement that you have tool coverage for all of the machines in your environment. So you have that host endpoint visibility. All right. So we're not going to get that as we pivot to this new capability that, well, is leaving those devices behind. Sad, but true, and leaves you with a second problem. And the tool better be worth it, right? As you embrace the new one. Yeah. And then I want to speak on product abandonment, which is a little bit different. So I have a couple of slides on product abandonment. I am watching time. Migrating the SIEM, some shout outs, but use cases are fantastic. Like, hey, I want to fold in all of my detections so I can efficiently identify emails that are consistent with phish. Okay, cool. Is that going to get us where we need to be in order to start making use of the platform? I love Microsoft's contribution here that you're going to focus on pivoting detection rules that are kicking about at the 90% positive, true positive rate. If you have any of those, please shoot them my way. But 90% or above, those are definitely coming with. Apples to apples, we're going to make sure that that custom content pivots over. I laugh. Hopefully you're laughing too. Validate detections and log retention. So I talk about prioritization. We want to approach this in throwing things into buckets. So this is a nice segue into the benefits of brainstorming, which hopefully when you're sitting at a brainstorming session about how you're going to migrate into a new tool, you're going to come up with some of these gems that we've discussed. But of all of the things on your wish list, please identify, you probably have a wish list coming up for end of fiscal year, right? Please identify the must-haves and then the should-haves. And then the could-haves, that would be badass, but then the won't-haves, well, because we're going with this new tool and it won't cover, legacy Mac OS, something like this, right? So the won't-haves, they can't be make or break, right? Because you've already signed said contract, or now you're going back and negotiating with the vendor for feature requests and the like. The won't-haves, you have to kind of craft some duct tape or workarounds. The must-haves have to be defined because that's going to be the definition of success, right? Those use cases are going to be the ones that engineers, that's the low bar before they pivot and start taking on some additional projects. So more on this for your own edification, but I really want to talk about product abandonment. So didn't get stats on this anecdotally. It's every place I've worked, and I've worked a lot of different places over the last 15 years. Every place I've worked, you could point to at least one security product that had not been fully utilized, right? People are still learning all of the cool features that they could have put into place, but now that's the legacy tool and they're pivoting on to the new one. No joke. If you felt like you were alone in this, you're not. It's happening all around the world. So abandonment factors. We want to make sure that we have support so we can fully onboard something, so we don't end up thinking, oh man, that would have been cool if only we had gotten to it. So I brought in a really cool abandonment scenario. Like, why do customers abandon their carts when they're kind of shopping online? But a lot of this is a one-to-one relationship as to why products are abandoned, or why the onboarding of a product is abandoned, like mandatory account creation in a shopping cart or checkout process is like MFA fatigue, like can't stand logging in one more time. Stop asking me for my creds. Long, confusing checkout process equals laborious data entry, required documentation. No discounts for your checkout. That means no enrichments for you. So why am I even in this tool if it's not going to add anything to my experience in performing incident triage? Unexpected shipping costs. Have you ever used a tool that charged you per query? I bet you have. Hopefully you've been shielded from the devastating inefficiencies that some of your queries have brought to bear. No one's complaining at you, fingers crossed. But in some cases, your query is something that you can put a dollar amount on. So unexpected shipping costs may result or parallel to that cost per query. Longer than expected delivery times. Dude, sometimes queries, they kick back the results like minutes, tens of minutes later. And you're like, why am I here? It's not like I can pivot and run another query and make things better. Normally not. Ambiguous return points to low fidelity alerts. Poor return on investment for detection, content creation in some cases. Lack of desirable payment options might tie into lack of report features. Didn't think I could tie those in. Abandon your cart. Likewise, abandon your security product in mid-deployment. So I give this to you again, just in a different format. Oh, feature due out. I've covered a lot of this stuff. But if something takes too long through the lens of the engineer, you might be a victim of deprioritization. Like, hey, something has come up that's very pressing. So we promise that in the next sprint, we'll get back to, say, crafting automations for your tool. You want to make sure that doesn't happen, but sometimes it will if things go on too long. Just make sure it doesn't result in product abandonment, you being left on the roadside waiting for the Humvee to pick you up. Marine Corps reference there. So I give that one to you. Just a couple more slides left. Here's some tips on how to prevent abandonment. Realistic expectations, realistic timeline. Get the upskilling done in the front end. Also recommended is upskill people before, during, and after onboarding. Like, that's a lot of money and a lot of time. Yeah, you're supposed to factor that in to your migration roadmap. You want to put guardrails up for the metrics, like I was saying. Don't expose metrics that are going to paint your analyst in a bad light when you've created a situation where they can't work in the most efficient manner possible, at least not yet. Identify additional data sources, and just keep your products in under active maintenance, and insist on it. Like that. Automation redrafting, just a point of mention. And as promised, the security tool migration checklist. I hope that this has given you fodder for your cannon. Yeah, because you're going to go in, you're going to have to fight for things. You're going to have to fight for additional support, additional budget, additional training. Do it. And let me know if you need some additional ammo. I'm there for you. I'll wrap it up. And thank you so much for your time. I didn't go over, but I also didn't leave many minutes for questions. So what do you think, Zach?
Awesome, as always.
Yes.
Love it. Love having you here.
What is the biggest advice that you can give about asking for more budget? I know that is like just such a huge hurdle for most practitioners.
No, right. I'm always like, hey, I'll craft a point paper for you on that.
Yeah.
You got to tap into your resources. There are going to be some very good arguers that will bring together the most salient points. But I will say, in order to push things through, oftentimes you have to get out the FUD. And fear, uncertainty, and doubt, you don't have to conjure it. All you have to do is highlight a couple of, say, partners or competitors that are in the same industry as you that failed in, say, pivoting to a tool from this century. So your threat intel team should be able to arm you with some of these stories of epic fail. And oftentimes those are compelling reasons. I know they're compelling for me. Keep my eyes focused on the prize, but they are also going to win over executive leadership, board members, if they have to approve additional budget, and always show your work, always capture the reasons why we're here.
Great advice. I know that comes up a lot. So thank you.
You're exactly right.
For going through that. I don't see a whole lot of other questions. Does anybody in Discord have anything? And it doesn't look like anyone has them in Zoom. So
awesome.
What's your favorite way to get buy-in from other teams? Do you like buy them donuts and stuff? So that way you can convince them?
My favorite line is, what matters to you matters to us.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Help me help you.
But my eyes are open. I was offering consulting services to an incident response team at a retail company. And I noted that the incident response team was pulling the lever for machine re-imaging. Machine re-image. And I was like, well, what's going on here? I had an opportunity to sit down with one of the help desk technicians, one of the field services techs, and said, how long does a re-image take? And he was like, oh, a couple of days. And I'm like, oh,
What?
re-image, 2 days of work. Like, so it's about being respectful of other teams' time. That might not be a popular answer, but that's normally how you can generate buy-in, is kind of to understand priorities of your support team, and what priorities you're competing against to get their time as a resource.
It looks like we did get a couple of questions here. Are there any resources Alissa recommends for product managers working with security teams? Schedule examples, communication tips and guides?
I've been through the ringer on going through project management courses, but I'll point back to LinkedIn Learning. Woo! But yeah, this is where I have gone and sought tutelage, sought further guidance, and I know other people are going to be chiming in. That's what you're here for. It's like, this is a perfect project plan for cybersecurity. I don't play that role too often, and I'm lucky I don't have to speak too much about frameworks that deviate from my main line of work. So yeah, I'd kick out to some free training that would get me well versed in that space, because there's so many projects tracking tools that are out there, and each of those vendors has incredible resource libraries.
What are your thoughts on sticking to using all the security feature you're already paying for in a cloud provider versus accepting additional costs from other vendors to not just put all eggs in one basket?
Oh my goodness.
Maybe that should be a topic for your next talk.
All eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
I know where this conversation is going. I think that having some say hybrid or heterogeneous nature in your security stack is a good thing, because there's less of that secret sauce. Like sometimes I open up our SIEM, which has some detections, and I'm like, well, how did this detection transpire? Like, what is making this fire? And it's secret sauce. Literally, there's less of a tendency to be befuddled by that magic, what's going on behind the curtain, if you have integrations across tool sets. I know it's difficult, perhaps harder, and requires a more skilled support team, engineering team. But I think that transparency is valuable.
Awesome. And that's so good. It's so good to hear.
Yeah.
On point too. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Alissa, and sharing your knowledge with us, and making this impact with the community. We really do appreciate what you do and what you bring to the table here and in your experience. So all I can really say is just thank you again. And if you guys are interested in learning more with Alissa, we have links in the chat. We have our incident response summit coming up. Megan just threw some links in the chat there. And we also have Alissa's advanced endpoint investigations class coming up here soon as well. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check those links out. And as always, we are here every Wednesday doing these anti-casts. So if you're interested in what's coming up, I put a link in the chat for that as well. And before I forget, join us in the breakout room. You need to have the Zoom application installed on your device to join us there. But if you have any questions about anything, please join us in that breakout room. Otherwise, thank you, Megan, Brian, and Ryan, and Alissa, of course, for being here. And hope you all have a great day and a great week. See y'all.
Thanks, Alissa. We appreciate it. We'll see you at the summit classes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.